I'm pretty easy going. Like I'm wearing a red boiler suit, so
Wearing the red IMF boiler suit, the moggles. You're set. All right, fuck yeah. Dude, Gami, thanks for coming on the show, man. Pleasure to have you here.
thanks for having me, man. It's been a while since we talked last. I think I did a interview with you like 2.5 years ago or something.
Oof, yeah, it has been a fucking while. You are the head of MOGONOMICS / cartel boss at the IMF, not to be confused with the International Monetary Fund. But can you explain the IMF, how it is, what it is, how it works, the whole shebang?
Yeah, you're welcome to confuse it with the Monetary Fund if you want to.
Well, I think
Like-
someone did the UN confuse it with the International Monetary Fund on Twitter. They tagged you guys instead.
Pretty much, it was. So it was the president of Uzbekistan was giving a World Economic Forum address, and they tagged us instead of the real IMF. And then it went out, and it was too late for them to edit or delete, so it's still out there.
Fuck yeah. Guerrilla marketing. Straight into it.
Yeah, that's actually a good place to start with, like what IMF is too, by the way, because it was started in response to the off-chain IMF, and we'll refer to ourselves as the on-chain IMF, because a bunch of us had basically helped a friend clean his basement after it flooded, and it had destroyed everything. And he's a fellow crypto founder and became a co-founder of IMF. We went to the pub and we were just chatting about like Clouted's original idea to do like Pepe finance. I think just because he had like big Pepe bags and he didn't want to sell them.
As you do.
And,
Fair.
And I'd recently read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which is about the IMF off-chain and how they assert US dollar dominance around the world by issuing unserviceable loans to third world countries secured by their resources. And I was like, wouldn't it be funny if we were the International Meme Fund?
Issuing unserviceable loans to degenerates with their meme coin bags that they refuse to sell.
Yeah, so it started as a joke like that, to be completely honest. You know, we were like, what if there was a maker for memes or an Aave for memes? And then long story cut short was we went through all these different iterations over the last year. Our birthdays on May 6th, because we started at the ETH Sydney Hackathon in May 4 and 5, 2024. And then, yeah, MO6 for May 6 spells out MOG. That's a pure coincidence. But as of a few weeks ago when we soft launched, we're a lender of last resort, similar to the real IMF. But the best way to describe like IMF in a sentence is it's a crypto native credit union. So it's like a member-owned bank, and we issue loans against basically any asset running on Ethereum. We've gone to market with MOG, and then we'll soon be open to any token, and works very similar to something like an Aave for memes, but it's essentially running on top of Morpho. So we're secured entirely by Morpho, and then we have another component to the protocol, which I'll touch on later, but the core of it is that we are a lending protocol for the long tail of assets, so the more risky stuff. And got I think been in the market for 2 or 3 weeks now. So
Okay, because I'm an actual like Neanderthal when it comes to DeFi shit. How do these loans work? Like, do I deposit MOGs? I know that you have USDS support. So like, is that Maker, Maker stablecoin, Sky now? I swear everyone's just done a rebrand. Like MicroStrategy's strategy, Maker is Sky. There's a couple of other big ones as well that I'm like, can we stop changing the names? But yeah, let's just say that, I go to IMF now and I have some MOG and I have some USDS. What do I do with them?
if you were a person with, let's just use like round numbers to give an example. So if you were a mogger and you had $100 of mog that you didn't want to sell, you could come to IMF, you could deposit the mog, you could borrow up to 77% LTV. Well, 76 because 77 would be a liquidation. And then you could borrow that value as USDS, which is the stablecoin issued by Sky, formerly MakerDAO, and then do whatever you want with those stablecoins. For the benefit of borrowing those stablecoins, you pay an interest rate, and that interest rate goes directly to the lenders of USDS on the other side of the market. And the IMF takes a 6.9% cut of that interest generated. So it's
of course it does. Yeah.
yeah, it's just the optimal number for the business model. Nothing to do with the meme at all.
No, nothing.
But yeah, so the way that it works is essentially over collateralized loans. So you deposit the MOG that we take as collateral and secure the loan that we issue to you with that collateral. And then say, for example, the primary use case at the moment is people want to get more exposure to MOG. So they will deposit MOG, borrow 50% of its value as USDS, then they'll buy more MOG and then put that into the protocol as well. And what it does is brings their loan to value ratio down to 33%. And then if they, if the price of MOG at that point were to drop 57%, that's where they would get liquidated. So it's essentially community coordinated credit. So you have the community using it as a tool to help drive the price up and set like a new floor, because it takes MOG out of circulation that could otherwise be sold, and then brings new buying power into the market on chain via Uniswap, or that's where the most liquid pool is. So that's sort of where most of the activity happens. But yeah, that's it. Very similar to how Aave works, but the core difference is that because it runs on Morpho, you don't have it's a biased market or a single-sided market, so you can only borrow or lend USDS, and the MOG doesn't move; it just stays as collateral. So it's actually like a lower risk system than having a two-sided borrow-lend marketplace. So yeah, that's sort of the gist of it.
And so you're saying that if MOG goes down, so like once you bring that like LTV ratio down a little bit, you have about a 57% price dip leeway on MOG. What happens if the price goes up a lot? Is that...
Yeah. So like what I was saying before is, say you've borrowed borrowed USDS to buy more MOG and then like deposit it to bring your risk down. Huge drop for you to get liquidated, and by liquidation I mean our protocol will sell your MOG to repay your debt, so there's no bad debt, and then you'll get back the leftovers basically, and you keep what you borrowed, so the loss isn't as crazy as people might believe it is. If the price of MOG goes up a lot, it just means that you unlock more borrow, because if you were happy at a 33% LTV and MOG like doubled and now you're at like half the risk, you could just borrow more USDS and buy more MOG and then bring your risk down again as you did before. So it's like another way of being long and managing a position is just you have 50% more exposure. So, recently there was like a 200% move. MOG doubled over like a period of 2 to 3 weeks. And if you were using IMF and having like 50% more exposure, then you get like 50% extra price appreciation as well, minus, paying interest and stuff like that. So we've seen people using it just to MOG harder, MOG 50% harder. And then, you'll often see people take a little bit of profit at the top, and then, as the price moves down again, maybe they see it as another buying opportunity. And it's best to borrow at the lows as well, because you're sort of like, you're borrowing at a point where you expect the price to go up. So you sort of face, less risk in terms of what your expectations are. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Before you were talking about how there's like another component that you're adding in to the IMF protocol. Can you share what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So at the moment, the protocol's sort of broken up into two parts. So like, which hand will it be? This one. On this side, you would have a side of the protocol that we call pools, and then the other side we just refer to it as pumps, because it's like the borrow lend market, and it essentially is what people use to get more exposure. On the pools side, that comes in later when we open the protocol to all of the other assets that want to use it, and it serves two purposes. So it's essentially a protocol managed Uniswap v3 position with token USDS. So say you had Pepe and you wanted to join the IMF credit cartel, you could bring your Pepe, deposit it into this pool. Then as the price appreciates, we farm out the USDS from that volatility and then put it into the Morpho market that we manage with our protocol. And over time, you're bootstrapping liquidity for borrow lend on that asset. So it's like an onboarding tool, and it's mostly useful for people who for communities that don't yet have a token that's liquid enough to get a safe oracle to be able to like have this, because one prerequisite is that you establish an oracle on chain for that USD price. But after you have reached like a certain threshold, you'll be able to get those requirements sorted and then unlock borrow lend against your asset. So like a good example at the moment, there's a token called Smurf that I was looking at.
I remember Smurf. Yeah, dude. That's... I don't want to talk about Smurf. I remember that like early on when like ETH memes were just starting to happen, like late 2023. I remember that was the Smurf. Yep. Go on.
Yeah. So like, by the way, no endorsement to like buy or sell any assets, not financial advice, all that sort of
no
stuff.
No Shilio, etc. Yes. Please don't listen to this and go buy these things.
Or else like you'll fulfill the title of this podcast 100%.
NGMI, that's it.
But yeah, so Smurfcat's like an interesting example, because it's at one point in time they had like a $3.5 million market cap, but $1 million in on-chain liquidity. And so at that point, they're an ideal asset to use this protocol, because they're at a low market cap. They could have an outsized impact on the price by introducing new buying power without selling. So it's like probably something to look at if you're interested, but obviously not financial advice at the same time. And then at the moment, they're currently below that $1 million liquidity level, which is like a safe level to unlock an oracle with most providers. So for now, they could come along and deposit Smurfcat into the pool part of the protocol until they get to a point where they've brought in new attention to bring that base up, and then be able to unlock borrow against Smurfcat and new buying power and all that sort of stuff. The other advantage of the pools component, which I mentioned before, is just a protocol managed Uniswap position. The other benefit to it is that it's a tool for whales to be able to exit without having selling activity on the market and causing these full stack Hitler candles that we're used to seeing. And the reason
I love that the full stack Hitler has just become part of like the vocab. Like I see ads for like, hiring a full stack engineer, and I can only read it as full stack Hitler first. And then I'm like, no, engineer, sorry. Oops.
Man, that's actually like some of them. I don't know, just like the best output of the degeneracy of meme coin markets is just like the vernacular. There's just so much.
The lexicon that comes out of this shit is just people left on the internet too long. You're like, okay, fuck, okay. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. Keep it going.
No, it's all good. So yeah, if say you're like a big mog holder and you're a big believer in the community, you don't want to do anything that's a detriment to the community, you can actually set up an exit strategy with IMF that is positive sum, like a win-win situation. So you could deposit into the pools component and it'll auto DCA you out of your position. But rather than just like taking your token and selling it, it's farming out the USDS at the same time from the pool that the protocol is managing and placing it into the borrow lend for that market. So like, I don't know, say you were like Artchick or someone like Murad, you could come along and deposit your tokens, be able to slowly and gradually make an exit. Like maybe you want to exit, say, a quarter of your bags, so you could bring it into the IMF. And then as price is appreciating, you're actually bolstering the borrow lend market and making it more liquid, so there's more available stable coins for people to borrow. So it's beneficial to the community while also, getting rid of some of that fright of like a whale just coming along and dumping the chart and ruining it for everyone. So we've tried to like solve that problem on both sides, and pretty confident that it's going to work really well for the mob community. And shout out to them for all the support, because like they've really helped us with like engagement for a really long time. And with that note, like we noticed that there's this new sort of yield farming opportunity from what we're doing, where stablecoin holders could deposit their USDS, and they're essentially engagement farming, because like these assets are valued on like attention. So it's early days, but like things have been going really well with this V2 since we deployed it. So pretty excited.
Go Mog. With, I think what you guys are like, what number holder is the IMF now in terms of Mog?
We just surpassed number 69, so I think we're either 67 or 68 at the moment.
Beautiful.
So yeah, there's about 600k of TVL in the protocol, and in terms of MOG, I think there's just about 1 trillion MOG. So we're like slowly climbing our way up, and it's cool because we've had like support even from K Money, like came and deposited. He's like probably the best known sort of like influencer type person in the MOG community, and I think he's got like a 75k position in the protocol when I checked on chain, and it was cool just to see like these communities are starting to understand credit as something that is like a financial primitive that has a really long history. Like debt predates money. You're born into society with a debt to society.
Fuck, that's a depressing aphorism, but you're right. Like, shit, it does. Like, money was invented out of like, hey, he owes me something. I need to be paid. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was created to quantify debt. So if you subscribe to like the David Graeber sort of theory on debt, good book by the way, Debt First 5,000 Years. It's also read, so. But in saying that, like the communities are starting to really recognize credit as another way to fund operations and fund growth. So instead of selling your tokens onto the market to fund the project's operation, or a new listing, or to raise some liquidity for like a sex listing, or to pay for like a new promotional video, you can actually just borrow against the asset, pay some interest, and if you get a good result out of what you invest in to help the project grow, the debt essentially repays itself because the value increases and your loan to value drops. So that's been really cool, talking to teams about that and then being like, yeah, we can't really sell our tokens because like if the market sees us doing that, like it's really bearish. And it's like, well, it's very bullish if you borrow against it because, you know, the funds are then actually in a protocol and not being sold, and you're reinvesting into your project. So we've even sort of been exploring some of these ideas around like nouns and other communities that have tokenized assets. So,
dude, you need to get the Ethereum Foundation on IMF so they can borrow again. Okay.
Imagine the headlines.
EF on IMF. There we go. So MOG is like the biggest holding on IMF. And I know that like the communities help bootstrap, but I mean like because Cloud had started it with this idea of Pepe being like the big bags, you know, what's the path forward for bringing the other like bigger meme coin projects on here as well? Because I'm like, the more you explain IMF, the more I'm like, fuck, it is such a good idea. Because like these are such attention-based assets. You can't go and reasonably dump it on the market purely for optics of like, you know, the top holders of MOG start yeeting their MOG, even if it's to pay for shit that would be good for the community. You know, you're just going to have that panic on Twitter of like, oh no, top 10 holders yeeting their MOG, fuck it, I'm out. Yeah, what's the play for getting this shit to reach Pepe or SPX communities? Because I know that the SPX guys, they'd fucking froth that. I'm not wearing my SPX shirt, damn it. But like, that's the kind of thing that surely a lot more meme coin communities would be interested in, it being like, oh, I'll just borrow against it. I don't actually have to yeet it on the market.
Yeah, so when our V1 was out, we had this facility just for Pepe, but it was way more complicated. We had our own stable coin to manage, which meant we had to like manage the ARB and like consistently repeg and all this sort of stuff. It was pegged to $6.90, which was also really confusing.
Yeah.
for users to like determine how much that is. But you know, when we had that system in place, like there were all these complexities, and then we went to develop the V2, and we were like, look, we should really be making this so it's open to all assets, and we really need to simplify things. And we spent like 2 or 3 months. Our developers are amazing, like, and incredibly patient, which is great. But they'd done all this development work, and then we'd gotten rid of the stablecoin element. We were building like a much more robust system. And then we were like, damn, this is like still pretty complicated. Like, I wonder if there's any other way that we can really like narrow this like scope down a bit, make it more robust, blah, blah, blah. And then we found out that with Morpho and Morpho Blue, we could essentially delete 60% of our code and just run everything entirely on their protocol. And they don't even charge a fee for these markets. So it was like, okay, that's cool. Now, what does that mean for like onboarding other assets? And the market that we've bootstrapped with MOG is effectively part of what Morpho calls a multi-market. So they're discrete markets that are isolated from everything else. So if there were to be some sort of like malfunction with liquidations and some bad debt into the system, there's no risk of contagion into other assets. It's kept within the confines of that particular asset. But the beauty of Morpho and Morpho Blue is that this multi-market functionality allows the stablecoin side, so our USDS, to service all of the markets. So like Pepe, SPX, Ticker Bitcoin, they can all come in, establish the same thing that MOG currently has, and the protocol effectively distributes the stablecoin to fit the demand from each of those different markets. So the onboarding is really simple. You know, it's like see it working for MOG, and you know MOG is doing really well since we launched. Not saying it's like all
directly
because of us or
correlated.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All,
like
all on you guys. Yeah.
yeah, like Like it's probably a tiny little bit our fault for good reason. But then like that once they see the impact that new buying power can have, and that new buying power requires no new money down. You know, you use your MOG to buy more MOG, or you use your SPX to buy more SPX. I think that there's like a really clear value proposition there from like a speculation standpoint, but also from an operational standpoint, and then like the whales getting a fair exit at some point. And so we've just stripped everything down to be as simple as like you just come along and deposit, and once you have the oracle in place, the market can be unlocked, and then all of a sudden you've got a borrow lend facility against your token. So we did have a lot of interest from SPX really early on, and then like they rocketed to like multi-billion dollar, or you know, however many billion. I think it was at 1.8 billion or something that they rocketed to at one point.
Yeah, that they ripped. I sold all mine in January 2024. So
epic run, like incredible stuff. But yeah, they sort of stopped caring as much about us after that because they were just like winning, you know. But now they're in a really great position where they could come back and get a lot of benefit from the protocol. So if you go to calc, as in calculator.imf.bz, there's a screen with real-time data pulled from the Uniswap pools and price data from Dex Screener. And you can select how much percentage of the supply you think the community can coordinate, and then what new buying power that unlocks, and see the kind of candle that has as an impact on the Uniswap pool. So, you know, like there's a lot of assumptions here. It's assuming that everyone would coordinate to do everything on the same day. But realistically, you see this crazy candle, right? Like if like 5% of the SPX supply were to coordinate, you get this like, I think it was like 5 or 6 or 7x increase in market cap. Damn. Obviously, that's just in the Uniswap pool, and then it creates this huge arb. But then that'll like you know, create a lot of new volume on centralized exchanges and order books everywhere. So they'll start showing up again. It's really like an invigorating thing to do to increase buying power out of sort of thin air. So then on the other side of that market, you know, as communities start to coordinate around this stuff, because like coordination is key. You'll actually see some really juicy yields for the stablecoins as well. So when we're at like 90+% utilization, our APY sort of trends around 20% on your stablecoins, which is real yield. It's not juiced with token rewards. It's actual stablecoin yield paid in the stablecoin that you deposit directly from the borrowers. So there is like a really nice symbiotic relationship there where funds or whales or people who are just smart enough to have sold the top and have some stables could come along and actually get exposure to memes without needing to have exposure to the, you know, insane risk and volatility. So you really just like enabling communities to sort of, in my mind, it's to sort of unlock this new paradigm where instead of just coordinating around creating memes and getting attention, they can also coordinate around the financial side. And it's almost like an iteration on DAOs, where instead of like voting over a treasury, it's just like you already have skin in the game, you have a big idea, you borrow some funds, you pay, you know, like a creator to create like an epic video and get distribution. And then if you see that reflected in the price, it's a very quick feedback loop. You know, it's like, and credit is sort of what makes the difference, where with DAOs, it was sort of like, let's give out grants and they're one way and it's effectively a handout and you might not ever see any return from it. Where credit, it's circular. So like, it's in the best interest of the person borrowing to repay their debt, because otherwise they're going to lose their collateral if the price goes down. And then I think over time you'll see like better and better ideas that have a more positive impact on the price be the ones that continue to borrow and unlock liquidity and use it well.
Yeah, from a marketing side, man, you could really put that like expected value calculator candle up on the timeline and just be like, guys, this is what happens if 1% of you, like 1% of supply comes in. Come on, pull your shit together, basically. You guys have a native token for IMF as well, which is like, I'm pretty sure that's just IMF, right? The ticker. Okay. How does that function in all of this? How does that work?
Yeah, so like back at the beginning, it was a way for us to raise some money. So we raised, I think, just under $1 million to fund development and to bootstrap the liquidity and the protocol. So we, funded our operations for a year. Now we're like currently providing stables to the protocol to help kick it off and all that sort of stuff. So it's been really useful in that way. Shout out to our supporters, like big up Swiss from Best Trader I know, and Brotato, and everyone else, of course. But nowadays it actually owns the protocol. So we've partnered up with Dimitri, who on Twitter is at Back the Bunny, with his protocol Salutary, which their handle is Build for Weight. And we've sort of taken a new bold bet as one of like 5 launch partners of Salutary to say that we want the value of our token inherently derived from the utility of the product we built. And what Salutary does is it gives you these, it's economic enforceability at the protocol level where your token behaves like a stock. So it's about building for weight and not vote. And what that means is like in the equity markets, you see, like you might buy a bunch of stock in a particular company and you're not buying votes. You're just buying exposure to like basically the meme of the company, right? Like most companies most companies that we hear a lot about in the stock market are not like really efficiently valued. Like there's often a meme premium with something like Tesla. And then, if you go to something like Coca-Cola, it's very much more like specifically valued on its, its revenues and its assets and all that sort of stuff. And what you see these more speculative tech stocks doing what they should do with their revenue, and that's reinvesting into growth. But then you see like a dinosaur company like Coca-Cola, and they reinvest their profits into loyalty of their investor base, right? They distribute dividends. So we think that in crypto, a lot of these projects that are going out and saying like, oh, there's revenue share and like revenue gets distributed to holders and stuff, it's actually retarded because you're still a startup. You're still a startup and you're spending the money you have for growth on retention. And you haven't even reached a point in your growth trajectory where you should even care about retention that much. The best way to retain early investors is to grow and not just like redistribute all your revenue to the people who got in early. Like they're already up if you're doing well. So we've taken like a bold bet to say we want this enforced at the protocol level and at the legal level. So that's what Salutary provides, is a protocol and legal framework that's enforceable and has the service providers behind it to enforce it if it ever comes to the point where someone acquires enough of our token to own the protocol and take over the admin keys, essentially. So what that means in practice is if you really like IMF and it's making good revenue and you want to direct that revenue somewhere else and grow the company because you think we're doing a poor job of growing the protocol. Sorry, I said company, I mean protocol.
The business, yeah.
Yeah, the business, the agency.
The cartel.
The cartel, yeah. The credit cartel is definitely the best one. You may come along and acquire 51% of the tokens and literally take over the protocol and direct it how you see fit. because perhaps we're not doing the best job. There are many different iterations of how that could look, and it's a spectrum. You know, you might decide that like, oh, it's at a point now where we should change the revenue distribution to be spread out to all the token holders, or perhaps we want to just like roll it up into a conventional DAO, or maybe someone like Nouns wants to own it and have the revenue going into their treasury. There's so many different things that could happen, and Salutary just like provides the substrate for the protocol to be valued and you know, transacted with in the same way that you do equities. You're generally not buying votes when you buy equities. You're generally buying you know, exposure, and then if you buy enough, you buy a takeover. So it's yeah, tokenized threat of takeover essentially, and that's how a lot of equities are valued. So we're sort of taking that approach.
Okay, I'm going to move it on to a slightly more philosophical tangent. You've been in crypto for quite a while, and I'd say that you're one of the most like original, or like most aligned with the original ethos of crypto people that I know. Meme coins are one of those things that copped a lot of flack. I think a lot of the more also similarly aligned crypto people, you know, really didn't like meme coins and how successful they were this cycle. It was a point of contention. Like a lot of the more DeFi oriented ETH guys were like, holy fuck, it's taking away mind share from the shit that actually matters. I think you guys have done a very good job of being like, fuck it, well, how can we make those two cross over? But what's your take on meme coins as an asset class in general, and how much they've kind of become the main thing this cycle anyway, at least from a retail perspective? Maybe not from an institutional at all, but from a retail speculation, new user acquisition point. What's your take on how that's all transpired?
Yeah, I think so. I have this sort of like it's a bit of a dichotomy argument for this. So like I take both sides, but make like a prescient point. So framing first, like Bitcoin before it became digital gold, which digital gold is a meme. It was the original meme coin, right? It was like, do enough people believe in this vision, and does it get enough traction to deliver on that vision? Like everything starts with memetics and symbolism and sign value as opposed to utility or exchange value. Bitcoin has incredibly strong sign value. You know, it's like you have a billionaire constantly chanting on the timeline that there is no second best. You know, he's like, he's a really crazy character, and he is a memetic icon himself, right? He's like this, there's all this symbolism around Saylor. And, you know, back in the old days, it was Roger Ver. He was Bitcoin Jesus, you know. It was like, and we rely on these sort of like symbols because they are really good at coordinating people around a specific idea. You know, like speaking even a bit more zoomed out briefly, if you think about like humans and how we develop and you know, and evolve over time, it's because we leave behind genetics. You know, it's instructions on how to like replicate a biological idea. Memetics are memes are what you leave behind to reproduce cultural ideas, right? So as the human race, we leave behind our genes and our memes. And this is sort of like some sort of esoteric shit, right? But when you think about why people are attracted to memes, it's a lot to do with the original reason that crypto started. Like Bitcoin was invented because there was too much trust in the system. You know, the Genesis block says Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for the banks, right? What Bitcoin was invented to solve was counterparty risk, right? Where you have too much trust in the system and the system does wrong by everyone else who participates in it. And then at some point, someone's left holding the bag. And, you know, we saw that in 2008, which led to the creation of Bitcoin. So I think with meme coins, it has just been this like more purist version of like speculating on something. And rather than having to have all this like financial knowledge and like ability to like value companies and go through balance sheets and understand financial forecasting and projections and all this other shit, everyone is just internet native. They're all just vying for attention all the fucking time. They're just trying to like be relevant. They're trying to leave behind some sort of a meme because, you know, we leave behind our genes. You may as well leave behind a meme. You may as well be known for something or have had some impact on culture in whatever way possible. And so I think people are just like inherently programmed to be reasonably receptive to it. Like, we're speculating on shit anyway, so you may as well speculate on something that you have some sort of a grasp on how the value might actually come about. There are obviously way more like concise reasoning around this that other people share, but I'm just trying to be like trying to share a bit of a different view. So like when it comes to these newer assets that that people have sort of like congregated around, you know, they're not that different from Bitcoin. Like, someone anonymously drops a token or whatever, people congregate around an idea, they chant the same things, they, you know, act like cult members, and then they start to just like propagate or proliferate an idea through culture. And I just think that, like, while everyone is sort of upset about, people outside of this sort of meme coin cycle have been upset about like the way these assets behave and the way that they're not like inherently attached to some sort of like utility value or whatever to an underlying thing. Like, I would just say that like most of the rest of crypto is overvalued probably as much as meme coins are. Like, everything's overvalued. Like, yeah. You know, your low float, high FTV fucking L1 shitter, it's a shitter. Like, no one uses your fucking chain. You know, so it's like
that's always been my gripe as well, of like, oh, meme coins are so extractive. It's just like, there's been about maybe 500 ghost VC chains where a bunch of guys in Silicon Valley launch an L1 or an L2 that no one uses, wait for a year, vest, dump their shit and go, all right, thanks for playing, and then pack it up. And then you just have the same thing. And no one had any fun. No one had any fun. It's just like, fuck, okay, great. I was exit liquidity again. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, and a big narrative with meme coins has been this like, oh, fair launch this, fair launch that. Like, there's never a fair launch. Like, even Bitcoin wasn't a fair launch. Like, of course, Satoshi kept it to himself early on to mine as much as he possibly could until the rest of the mailing list were like, fuck, what's going on? I need to mine this too. It's because like people who are driving these things and providing outsized value for their growth should have outsized exposure, because like that's what it takes to get to a critical mass where it can go further. All that sort of like philosophical and ideological shit aside, I mentioned this sort of like dichotomy sort of situation. So like, I'm a believer that like we don't need more coins. Like, I'm happy for there to be more coins because like power law dynamics still apply, and like the long tail is still going to be small and the fat tail is going to be huge. And although liquidity gets trapped in these long tail assets, it eventually bleeds out into the bigger ones that win. And that's just power laws. Like, it's unavoidable law of the universe and markets, right? But while there have been a lot of new coins, like there's this Pump Fund stat recently. There were 9.2 million coins created on Pump Fund, and only 3 were worth $100 million or more. And that's like 0.0003% or something deemed like successful by crypto means. At the same time, you have like content coins and the narrative driven by Jacob at Zora and Jesse at Base, and everyone's bitching about it. You know, they're like, a lot of Solana people from the meme coin trenches are like crying and saying like, this is stupid. Like, these are not successful meme coins, and it's like, who cares? Like, let everyone do whatever the fuck they want. Freedom to transact is the whole point. Like, it doesn't matter.
I'm probably guilty of bitching about it a little bit.
I've bitched about it too.
I'll put my hand up as the sole guy and be like, "Sorry, Gami, that was me. I think I was on the timeline having a crack at some point."
I did too, because like engagement farming, right? Like,
and just the branding of it, I was like, "Boys, there's a better way of doing this." But again, like from an immutable censorship, it's like, fuck it, who cares? Like, why get so in a twist about this? Who gives a shit? Yeah,
like their coins all the way down, and like at the same time, like, yes, there is already like way too many coins, and like maybe we should all just cooperate instead of just constantly competing against each other, because crypto is like the best thing ever to coordinate people at scale, and so are memes, and memes fit really well onto blockchains. But on the other side of that argument is like, yeah, look, I can reason with more coins while I say like there shouldn't be so many more. On the other side, like if you think about like retail investors and new entrants coming into the space, they don't come to crypto and go, by golly, I'm really excited that there's so many coins to choose from. Because they don't. They buy like XRP and Cardano, and they buy, in Solana they buy fart coin, because like that's a fucking great meme. Everybody farts, right? And the relative stench index is pretty high.
Farts are funny universally. It does not matter where you are in the world. Farts are funny. So that's it.
Yeah. And if you've ever been an athlete or a gym enjoyer, and you have outsized protein ingestion, you fart a lot. So if they were fart to earn, some of us would be absolutely loaded. But
ripping through.
But the point I'm making is, what has really good product market fit with normies is big green candles.
That's it.
They love to buy huge green dildos. Like when the market rips, the majority of onboarding to crypto happens in the last huge weekly green candle at the blow off top. Like, just look at the fucking data. Like, they're not buying the long tail of dog shit. They're buying a few blue chips at the top. And then they ride their bags down, and then they come back next cycle and they're like, shit, I'm into crypto now. That's how it's worked the whole time. So what my argument is, like, in terms of, reasoning with more coins and bigger candles, is like, yeah, fine, create more coins, because they're for like the niche user, the more like long-term crypto degenerate,
the gambling addicts. Yep.
Yeah. And this is where this like dichotomy occurs, where what Pump Fund did really well isn't necessarily the bonding curve, in my opinion, because like Simon de la Rouvier invented that on an EVM chain, I think on Ethereum, like fucking years and years ago, and it didn't catch on as big. Jacob from Zora used it with Saint Fame before Zora. Unisocks did it. Like it's been around for fucking ages, right? And it's like, it's cool, but the thing that Uniswap did really well was like to make the coins just illiquid enough that they pump really fucking hard for the user base that is present on Solana. Like whoever did the math, they got it right and they figured it out, and it fucking creates huge green candles. And that's why like normies came into crypto again, because there was huge green candles, not because there were 9.2 million memes to choose from. They bought the ones with big green candles and created even bigger green candles, and that's why there's like 3 over 100 mil and the rest are fucking going to zero, or like, just barely relevant. Yep. And that's kind of like the thesis behind IMF is like, coordination games are really fun and really exciting and very effective in crypto. And to create a movement, you need to start with a meme. You need to start with an idea that will culturally spread and is easy to spread. And not a meme as in like a funny joke picture, a meme as in a unit of culture, an idea, a word, a fucking religion, whatever it is they all start with some sort of memetic icon, a symbol. And I think that like as IMF gains more traction, we're going to see more and more communities realize that like coordination is the point, because you're trying to spread an ideal, an ideology, a thought, a joke, whatever it is, a lifestyle. And MOG are really good at that. They're like, well, you may as well win at everything you do. So let's spread that idea. And I'm excited about people starting to understand like meme coins as just this really purest example of coordination, and coordination being the important factor in blockchains above all else. We solved counterparty risk. Counterparties are people you transact with, transact as in act together towards a goal, like coordinate. That's the point. This is how you prove that blockchains are effective. You try to build on top of what Bitcoin brought to the market. And smart contracts enable that. Solana and the Ethereum ecosystems are doing really well. Like, despite ETH price, people are coordinating around ideas and they're doing it at scale. And I think, just meme coins, when they're illiquid enough and juiced a little with some extra buying power, they're beacons to the mainstream of like, look at what can happen and look how simple it can be. And all you have to do is like buy, never sell, borrow, repay your loan.
Fuck yeah. But what you said before about like the idea of coordination, I think that memes are still, obviously everyone's financially coordinating in a sense because they're all buying it and selling it or whatever they're doing with it. But like at the moment, I feel like memes are still limited to like social coordination, in the sense that if you go into any fucking Telegram chat or Twitter group chat for like a meme coin community, it's all like raid this, get social exposure. But if you were to be like, just add that little next step of financial coordination around meme coin as credit/debt, where you're like, hey, everyone borrow against it, or deposit it here and then borrow against it. And then you have that kind of mass financial coordination of everyone doing all of that together. And that can have just as much, if not more, impact on the price at a much greater scale. Because then there's less almost like randomness of hoping that it gets somewhere socially and just putting shit out on Twitter. It's like, well, no, we can have an immediate aggregate impact on the price financially by all collectively doing this. Like I can actually calibrate exactly everyone in this chat. You share your wallets, whatever. We can see how much money everyone has, and therefore we can estimate that impact on price, rather than just slamming shit out on Twitter and being like, fuck, I hope someone sees
100%.
it and buys it as well.
Yeah, that's a really good example to bring up, because like if you think about like the addressable market of crypto Twitter, let's, like most people with like 200,000 followers, 80% of them are fake, and like another 10% are dead accounts, and maybe 10% are real. So let's just say there's like 20 to 30,000 real addressable people on crypto Twitter. Like it's probably way more, but like I'm talking people who actually have any kind of an impact on the industry, right?
Yep.
Convince all of them to buy your coin, and you topped out at like whatever, right? Look at SHIB, Pepe, some of these other coins like Doge. Doge has reached like the mainstream audience and has millions of holders. We need to get other coins of relevance to that kind of a place, but give people more to do with those coins than just like hold it on a chain that doesn't do anything other than secure Dogecoin, right? So you see things like Doge OS coming out and all that they're bringing virtual machines to these chains. But the point that's worth making is, instead of just like trying to get us crypto bro degenerates to like all buy your coin and get it to whatever the ceiling is, you need to start thinking like, how do you get everyone else to hear about it outside of crypto? And like rating tweets is not how you get there. It's a waste of fucking time. Like it's fun and it's cool to like rally the troops, and you get people to do that, and then like a little candle pops up and they're like, fuck yeah, we're together and we can do this, and it's reassuring. But back to like philosophical standpoint, like I believe that getting on chain today is like getting online in the 90s, right? It's like, it's a transformational thing. It's like, if you got online in the 90s, like a lot of us and my friends did, like you learnt to like make some basic software. You learnt how to navigate the web. You learnt how to not get scammed, how to cut through bullshit, how to reach people, like how to build a business. You know, there's all these things that you learnt because of the internet. So now we're getting into this world where it's on chain and there's a whole new, you know, like range of experience for everyone to have and learn and develop and grow. And what it comes down to is like, same thing with crypto, how it's always been. Get more people to buy your bags. Like it's on board everyone into fucking crypto. Like and the way to reach the masses is to produce fucking giant green candles that get on the news. Like that is the most direct way to reach people, because they see it and they're like, holy shit, these people just made 10,000x on some shitcoin I've never heard of. Like, wow, that means that that's going to happen forever. I'm going there. You know, like it's always what brings mainstream into crypto is huge green dildos. So we need to start coordinating around more than just like onboarding the 7 people that haven't yet bought our coin, and instead go out and find the like other 7 billion people that haven't yet joined crypto. And the way to do it is to get smart about the time that we spend and the money we have and the tools we've built, because we have so many things that are uniquely enabled by crypto that people just don't use. And if you're just like buying and holding, you're retarded, because like there is so much that you can do with crypto. Whether it's like don't sell your crypto and do something like borrowing against it and being a degenerate and learning about decentralized finance, or if it's like using it to coordinate in more interesting ways or unlock all this other utility that's possible. The point is that it's inevitable. Like these assets, they grow to a certain size and then they get stuck, and then you need to do more effective things to get them to grow further. And that's my big bet in what I'm trying to do, is just like understanding with a decade of experience in crypto that what brings more people in is the huge green beacon that you shoot out into space and the whole world fucking sees it on the media. And they're like, wow, no asset has ever moved like this. And then more people buy it because they learnt about it. You know, it's like, it's a pretty clear strategy in my opinion. And I just think that a lot of people in crypto have gotten really lazy because they've just like, they've made money and then they're just like, yeah, that is what it is. So, yeah.
While we're on the topic of giant green dildos, just you know, what's your favorite what? No, I'm kidding. Murad cops a lot of shit for like the Memecoin super cycle take, especially post November through to about maybe. I think now that meme coins are actually moving again, everyone's like, he was right. We owe him an apology. It's like, guys, they're up like 10% off the lows. Chill. Except for Filecoin. Go Filecoin. But
yeah,
Murad's copped a lot of shit in this last couple of months for the whole meme coin super cycle thesis. I'm interested to hear what you think happens towards the end of this year in terms of meme coins as assets. Like clearly, you know, you may have what some would call a bag bias towards memes, but yeah, I'm interested. I've seen a lot of takes say that memes are basically dead. I think you can caveat that in a lot of different ways of like, yeah, the majority of them probably, like, let's be honest, there's a lot with too many bag holders where every pump's just an exit pump. But yeah, people seem to be declaring memes dead. They go like, okay, it's a return to value time in the market. It's like, don't worry about memes. But Filecoin, a couple of others have all ripped the hardest off the lows. Still the most reflexive assets. So, you know,
that's right.
That's exactly it. So it's like, clearly, in my opinion, they're not dead. There'll be a smaller subsection that do better. But yeah, what's your What's your read on the meme coin super cycle? Are we still in one, or is it just much more concentrated? Or yeah,
I think that like Murad's conviction, sorry, is like it's just it's not that he like is that crazy. I think it's that he understands like what a movement requires, right? He's like, there's a video I'll always point people to, Derek Sivers, called "Leadership Lessons from Dancing Guy," and it's at a music festival.
Derek Sivers, is he the CD Baby guy?
Yeah,
Dude,
he created CD Baby back in the day.
Yeah, Derek, he's fucking awesome. He's like the principle of like, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no.
100%.
Was sorry.
So like super great thinker, really good on startup like theory and like great insights on markets and stuff. And this one video he has is I've talked about it everywhere, but basically there's a music festival, there's a big grassy knoll, and there's no one there, and then all of a sudden there's this one guy doing this dance, right? And he looks like an idiot, and that's great because other people want to join him. And a few people come in, and you start to realize that it's not actually like the messiah or the the quote unquote leader that actually matters. Who matters is their first follower, but maybe even more important, like the few followers who come in after that. So there's always the first person who has to have the courage to be like, you know what, this guy is crazy and I fucking support him. And they go in, and then you reach this threshold where the floodgate opens, and that's a movement, right? It's like, it starts with a mimetic icon, an idea, a vision, a goal, whatever it is. And then once enough people start to pile in, everyone else starts to believe, because it's social proof. And so you need someone like Murad at the top just being like, we're going to fucking $16 quadrillion tomorrow, you know? And everyone's like, yeah, we are. We're going to quadrillions, man. Let's go. And
PubCap will be ridiculous. Worth more than every asset on the planet. Clearly. Duh. Yeah.
So there's like, you know, like I respect what he's doing. Like he has conviction in what he's doing, and he understands like that you have to get egg on your face essentially to even have a chance at this being real. Like, you know, anyone who leads a movement, they look ridiculous in the early stages, and they're either right or they're wrong. If they're wrong, they're like, oh, well, I gave it my best, you know, and people are like, yeah, man, respect. So I think that like there is definitely obviously a market for people to care a lot about this stuff. But I think that a lot of founders are approaching this from the wrong direction. And look, they might argue against it because like IMF is early and their token launcher is late to the .fund bubble. You know, like not everything needs a fucking token launcher.
Yep.
And yes, there is very likely a world where everything is tokenized and some things have a 1 cent market cap and some things have a $1 billion market cap. But the point is that like there's so much noise that like it's hard to be excited about like all the noise, because like we live in this age of abundance. Like AI is just producing infinite content at an infinite rate of acceleration that we just can't even comprehend, and it's going to get more crazy. And people are already trying to find an awakening from the meaning crisis, right? Like we're all just like fried, and we've been fed algorithms. Like you just got to go on public transport. Everyone's staring at their phone like this, you know, and then they're like, "Oh man, I don't know why I have neck pain." And
or like, I feel a little sad. I've looked at a screen for 12 hours straight today, and I don't know what it is. I just don't feel that great.
It's because of like. What my belief is, like I identify as an autonomist, and I don't identify as an autonomist as like the Italian left-wing extremist party from the 60s and 70s, 80s or whatever it was.
I was going to say, oh, Mussolini fan, nice. No. Jeez, but, we're an hour in. All right, man, but let it out.
But more the like the literal sense of like I'm an advocate for autonomy, self-directing freedom. Like I think that like your agency as an individual is like how you find meaning in life. It's like like at the cellular level, we we are controlled by quantum fields, right? Like I'm not going to get too esoteric, but like when you think about like randomness and entropy, you think about like quantum random number generators, right? You think about things at this like level of consciousness where like there are physicists going out into the world now saying that like, you know what, maybe consciousness exists outside the body and it's not a product of the brain. Maybe the body and the brain are a product of consciousness. So just like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but my point that I'm trying to make is like AI is still machine driven. It's zeros and ones. It can only get so random. It can only get so creative. Like it still depends on humans for their opinion on what is a good or a bad idea, because we can feel, right? And this is like true down to the cellular level, through like the literal proliferation of cells and how we fucking evolve and all this sort of shit. So like, I'm just saying this to give like some kind of a weight to my argument, because like I've recently been obsessing over this like quantum field theory, but anyway, like more literal sense and more relating to the markets is like we're already like overwhelmed, and we're already plugged into the matrix. We're already just like looking at a phone without even doing anything to it. We're just looking at it and the feed just keeps going. You don't even have to touch it. Then you put your phone down, you're like, fuck, my neck's sore. And you think about the scene from the Matrix where you literally unplug your neck. Like that's where it's sore, right? So symbolically, there's already like a brewing, like humankind-wide movement of like, fuck, we need our agency back. We need to decide how we spend our time. We don't need more. We need more signal, right? So I think that we're going to start to see somewhere between 12 and 24 coins that matter. And they don't have to be meme coins. Like IMF, for example, can service any coin. We target on servicing the long tail that's overlooked by the major lenders. You know, they mostly just service the blue chips. And we think that there's going to be a bifurcation of dog shit into blue chips. So there'll be a lot of this, like 99.99996% will just go to zero, and then like 0.000 or 0.0004% will rise to the top, and you know you're going to have a couple of dozen, a few dozen at most coins that really do skyrocket to these big numbers because they capture the attention of the normies, because they coordinate hard enough to get to that point where they make it onto the news. They captivate audiences through the potential of like, what if I caught a coin that went to that height, as opposed to what if I was an insider who's trading 24/7, or not an insider and just plugged into this like ubiquity and this like overwhelming market to like be tapping that fucking poker machine button and then be like, yes, I hit a jackpot today. And then you don't hit one for 6 months, and then you hit another one, and it's just enough to keep you hooked. I think there's going to be more people coordinating around movements, and it's going to be driven by this like human level desire to have our agency back, because it's unsustainable. You know, like you just go into the public space, like people can't even stand for the 3 seconds that it takes for the crossing green man to pop up and cross the road. They're like, and then they miss the light, and it's like, bro, like I'm over here.
I have it on my runs all the time where I nearly like run into people who are doing these ones on the footpath, and I'm like, bro, come on, like just look up, man. Like there's not enough room for you to be just sleepwalking on this one, dude. Come on. Yep.
Like, and you know, there's always going to be people that are speculating on the brand new stuff, and they're going to be pumping stuff, and it's going to get attention too. But attention is fleeting, and the only way to get mainstream's attention is to be big enough and green enough for long enough, and that's really the way that I see it. So.
Fuck yeah. Gami, dude, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. I had a lot more that I wanted to ask you, but we'll have to do it on another rep. I'll have to run it back at some point.
Sorry about that. I just fucking waffle.
Dude, no, not on you at all, man. This was fucking awesome. I'll be keen for another show, and in a couple of months, we'll check out the IMF side of things. We'll check out the growth. We'll have, to quote you just then, more green, long enough, big enough for longer.
Hard enough.
Hard enough. That's the core component. But yeah, dude, where can people find you on socials / on the internet in the meme space? And what's coming up next that you want to point people towards to go check out if they're listening to this and they're like, fuck yeah, I'm about it.
Thanks for the opportunity to plug, and thanks for having me.
Mate, this is a shill. This is a safe space to shill, except for too many coins. Not financial advice.
Okay, yeah. Just the ones we own.
Just our bags. Yeah.
You can find like everything I'm involved with, like my social links at gami.wtf. So GAMI.wtf. Main focus at the moment is IMF, which is at imf.bz. And then what's coming up next is May 6th with the month of MOG, the full launch of IMF. And then, just cooking up some cool stuff with nouns and NARs as well. So trying to see what an iteration on DAOs might look like, and I think credit may play a role in that, and just running some experiments. So yeah, mostly active on Twitter and Warpcast, so you'll find me there via my website that I shared before.
Yeah, dude, sick. All right, cheers for coming on, man.
Awesome. Cheers, appreciate it, dude.